Welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast, your guide to optimizing your life one health tip at a time. This podcast is designed to entertain and inform, not to provide medical or health advice. Always consult your doctor when it comes to your personal health or before you make any changes to your diet, exercise, or lifestyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast. I'm Coach Kyle, and I'm here with Dr. K. And today is going to be an episode that's a little bit different from a lot of the episodes we've done. So a lot of the episodes we've done, we've taught on specific topics, EBOO, stem cells, your Reiki, weight loss. We've hit on a bunch of different stuff. But today is going to be less about topics and more about what's going on in our lives. So Dr. K, can you share the good news?
I hope it's good news, but basically what's happening is that we are now starting the Longevity Center FL located in West Palm Beach, Florida. So that's right. That means I am leaving my current place of employment and we're actually starting up our own clinic.
I know we've talked about a lot of the things that you do on a daily basis and a lot of the things that I coach people through. So what is anything you do going to change, or what are you going to be offering at this clinic?
Basically, my offerings are going to stay the same plus some. So I'm going to be offering the same things that I'm really good at, which is going to be the IV therapies, the regenerative injections, the osteopathic manipulation. But my whole point behind the Longevity Center is to make it a one-stop natural medicine shop, which means it's not just going to be myself there anymore. It's going to be a bunch of high-level, highly skilled people doing what they do best. Some of the other people joining me will be a colonics person for colonic hydrotherapy. We'll have Craniosacral Therapist. We'll have a Reiki practitioner. We'll have bioenergetic scanning. We'll obviously have you, Coach Kyle, offering your lifestyle and supplement coaching. And we're going to have another physician offering hormone replacement and peptide consulting.
Very nice. Yeah, that's pretty wide range. So this natural medicine center, I don't want to really get into the weeds too much, but I know we had a discussion about one of the main reasons you wanted to break off and do your own thing was pricing. You wanted to make two things specifically more affordable to people, and that was stem cells and EBOO. Can you talk about your thought process a little bit around that?
Yeah, so the thing that right now is happening is that everyone's kind of basing their prices around what everyone else is charging and not around what this stuff actually costs. So some of the margins on this stuff is beyond massive. And it basically prices out the middle class. These are therapies only for people that have thousands of dollars in disposable income every month to be able to come do this stuff, which I don't think is fair or right. So my whole purpose is that we're going to make this affordable for the middle class.
The goal here would be something like, hey, this is a person who, maybe works construction, has a good gig, runs a small crew, hurts his back. He can come in and actually afford an injection instead of having to pay $40,000 to have his back injected at a different clinic.
That's exactly the point. Is I don't want to see, unless you're doing an ungodly amount of, for example, stem cells, you shouldn't see 5-figure price tags at my clinic.
Yeah, the only 5-figure price tags that at the Longevity Center will be like massive procedures.
Yeah, like if you want to inject your whole spine from your neck all the way through your lumbar, you're probably going to get into the 5 figures, but that's just because you're buying so much of it. And so let's touch on that price model a little bit. So the way most places operate nowadays is that they basically charge you a flat fee per milliliter of stem cell product. And so if you're doing 1 milliliter, they'll charge you X amount. If you're doing 5 milliliters, they'll charge you 5X. And so we're changing the game on that. And what we're going to be doing is saying there's going to be a small administration fee that just covers our expenses, my time, my skills. And then you're buying the product for almost the same price that we are. We have to add on a little bit for taxes and shipping and a few other expenses. But if we're buying it for $100, you're buying it for $120. So it's not a massive markup on the product.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because the way it's normally done in a lot of integrative medicine or regenerative medicine clinics is, you have your stem cell product and it has the margin baked into it. And then whatever volume it is, that margin gets multiplied by that many mLs. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a discount for volume. Oftentimes there's not. So, but what that does is that incentivizes small procedures that are less effective because of pricing. And it gouges people on the top end because it, if you use it, for example, 10 mLs and you have 10 times that margin of 1 ml, it didn't take that much of the doctor's time to do that much. It did not scale like that. Most of the time is in the prep and the setup anyway, and the injection time is just a couple minutes.
Yep. So that's always the hardest part is when people hear these, there's like two levels right now. There is high level and where you're getting a ton of volume and it's really skilled and you're getting a good job, but it's really expensive. And then there's low level where you're getting just a little bit of it into a joint. And unfortunately, most people don't know to compare that fact that you're paying a lot more, but you're getting a much better result at the end of the day. So my whole point with this pricing model is to be able to take these high level results, high level volumes, and bring them down to a affordable price point. So that you can do, instead of 2 cc's in your joint, we could do 10 cc's all around, for example, your knee, get all the ligaments, all the tendons, the joint, everything we need to without making exorbitant.
And that's huge. So you're literally talking about, you go into a clinic and you can get a quote for some stem cells and you get a quote for 2 mLs, maybe 3 or 4 in your knee, right? You, for the same price, could do not only more than that, but not only inject the problem area, but also all of the surrounding areas that's probably affected from that area that's been moving around, causing other tendon and joint and ligament issues.
Exactly.
See, that's, and I can speak firsthand to that. Some of the stuff you've done on me, you've done this approach, like on my lower back, you've done this, and oh boy, did it hurt when I was getting the PRP injected, because I didn't want to pay for the stem cells at the time.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing is people won't really have to pick between stem cells and PRP anymore. My whole point is to make stem cells more accessible, almost as accessible as PRP.
Make stem cells accessible again.
Yep.
But I really like that. And it's one of those things, it's like, I'm operating in a capacity where I'm kind of your business manager, per se. I've seen the numbers that Dr. K is taking for a margin on stem cells, and I disagree with them. I think it's too low. like it's to the point where I'm, as a business person, kind of uncomfortable with what he's offering. And that, from an outside perspective, should be like, holy crap, this guy is actually trying to drive actual improvement in people and improve their lives. He is willing to take well below what he should be getting paid for per hour to do stem cells on people, just because they work. They actually work. So that was only one of your big changes. Your other big changes was EBOO, I think.
Yes. And so right now, EBOO, we've mentioned it before, the lowest price you can find, and this is probably literally one clinic in America, is $900. On average, around where I am in Florida, that ranges from about $1,000 up to the highest I've seen is $2,500. In a high volume, high expense place like New York City, the average price is $2,700. California is somewhere around the 2000s. And the thing is, these are all market driven prices, which is fine, I guess. People have rents to pay and staff to pay and, higher cost of living and all that. But everyone's basing the price, once again, around what everyone else is charging and not around actual margins. And so we're doing this again with EBOO. We're looking at it and we're saying, hey, we don't need to charge as much as these people. We're starting out as a smaller clinic. We don't have crazy high expenses. So we're going to do EBOO. Our introductory price is going to be $800.
Wow. Yeah, and you have some inside knowledge on EBOO as well, right? You have a custom machine. You were one of the first in the U.S., first handful of people. So
as far as I can tell, I've done more EBOO than many, many people in America. And the way I can tell that, I have friends that, they work for these EBOO device companies. And they travel around and they're like, yeah, I've seen people doing 50 a year, 100 a year. I was doing like 30 a month. So I've done hundreds, plural. So I've done a lot of them. And yes, you're right. I did build my own, or not really build, I set up my own EBOO machine, kind of bought all the parts that make it work. And though it was based on someone else's protocol, I can't take all the credit for it. But about 2 years ago, set it up based on someone else's protocol. And then I've been fine tuning it ever since to really make it work very efficiently. To the point that a lot of the problems that people complain about with EBOO, people feeling dizzy, people feeling not good, I really don't see. I've only had a couple, and I literally mean a couple, bad reactions at the close to 1,000 EBOOs I've done.
Yeah. Like having the custom machine that is maximized for what you do and the efficiency and the beneficialness of the treatment also helps in your margin, because the way you built it has made the system more efficient. Is that correct?
It allows us to have a lower price point for sure, because my total build cost on this machine is far lower than buying a commercial EBOO machine, which are in the mid 20,000s and up. So we're nowhere near that price to build it.
Yeah. So basically, because it costs less to start, we can offer it for less. Mainly on EBOO, you're paying for your time because you have to be there in the room for an hour, roughly.
Right. It's not like another IV. Like if I hook you up to a high-dose vitamin C IV and you're there for an hour, I plug you in, I can leave for 59 minutes and you'll be perfectly fine. EBOO, yeah, I have to be around the whole time and keeping an eye on it.
Yeah. You got to monitor the flows and the filter and the output and all that stuff. So the fact that we're offering this at $800 is an introductory price. If you hear this and we're years down the line and the price has changed, well, we started at $800. Know that.
Really, our price going up is if the base cost of materials goes up, which anything is possible. You know, cost of goods is rising on everything. We're setting our prices around today's prices. And we're going to keep lower margins, and unfortunately our prices will adjust as time goes on.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the EBOO for $800 is massive. And the goal with this and the stem cells is in part to make it affordable for the average person. But, you know, the other side of that is incentivize people to come to South Florida for treatments. So for example, say if I'm going to do 10 cc's of whatever in my C-spine, and I want to get an EBOO because I've heard the results are better after I do an EBOO, and maybe I want to do a follow-up EBOO a little later or whatever, I could save potentially tens of thousands of dollars by getting on a plane and having a week vacation in a 5-star resort in West Palm Beach and getting it done at our clinic versus having it done in New York City or San Francisco or LA or Austin.
Yeah. I think you pointed out that if you're looking at $2,700 for EBOO versus $800, that $1,500 difference will buy you a flight and a few nights in a hotel.
Yeah. So, and that's one thing. It's even a wider gap, stem cells. So like if you want to come down for 4 days or 5 days and do 2 EBOOs, one on each end of the trip, you literally will save $1,000 by having a vacation in South Florida. Yeah. So that's, and as a business, we're actually going to be focusing some of our marketing efforts on those hotspots that I mentioned, you know, the San Francisco, LA, Austin, and New York, because we want to make these things accessible, and it doesn't make sense to us why, besides just competition, these cities are charging so much.
Exactly. Okay, and then so we've talked about we've talked about the highlight offerings that we'll be doing. Let's talk about some of the other things that we'll be offering.
Okay, what do you want to talk about first?
So I just want to point out, we are going to get each of these people on the show. We're going to have just a whole episode with each practitioner we're having in the clinic so you guys can learn more about them. Yeah, let's start with your offerings. What are you going to be offering?
Yeah, so I will be partnered with the doctor who does the hormone and weight loss peptides. So I'll be working with him. So the way it'll work is we'll have an offering for, hey, if you want to come in and get TRT, you can see the doctor. This is the price level. And if you want to get TRT and then be coached on terms of how to make that TRT work in your life the best for you, that's going to be a different offer. And we'll have coaching services that I'll provide, or one of the people on my team will provide. So that'll be working with him as well as on the weight loss meds. So we'll have an option where, you know, you can come and meet with the doctor. He'll decide if you're a good candidate for these weight loss medications. If he decides that you don't have any contraindications, most likely he'll write a prescription. And then you'll have the choice whether you want to work with a coach like me or not. And I'll have an entire program built out on how to optimize these weight loss medications so you don't have to be on them for life, and so you don't regain the weight when you go off them. So those are kind of the two main things. But, you know, aside from that.
Well, I just want to point out that besides in person, we are going to offer this remotely as well. Between myself and the other doctor, we're licensed collectively in about 10 states. And so as business grows, we will keep expanding those states. And so we want to be able to bring this nationwide because it's kind of a unique offering what you're talking about. There's not too many places that truly integrate lifestyle coaching along with the medications. Usually you can get lifestyle coaching or you can get the medications and you're going back and forth between two places. Here, the doctor and the coach are working closely together to fully optimize everything.
Yeah, and there's the magic in that too, because the doctor will tell the coach on the backside, like, hey, this is what the dose this is what I'm going to do with the dose. This is what I'm going to do with the medication. This is what, and then the coach will actually be able to be educated on what the doctor's doing and then make a plan. And it's just that much more efficient, that much better. We're adapting quicker to the changes. And you're actually maximizing the medication. Testosterone, Ozempic, these are not molecule miracles. They can be, but if you do not actually execute the lifestyle changes, you're not going to see even a fraction of what you could get out of them if you did. So those are the two main offerings. I'm also going to do just straight up health coaching as well. So lifestyle, diet, exercise, supplement optimization, and then I'll also work with the doctor for other peptides as well. So like if someone's interested in doing something like TB500 or BPC157, the doctor will prescribe those if he feels it's correct, and then I'll work with the client on how to adapt those into their life. So those are my offerings. I think we've talked about most of them on the show.
Yes. So let's talk about colonics next. Ooh.
I don't know anything about colonics. Like,
for those that don't know, it's basically a water enema. It goes a little higher, takes a little longer. My whole idea behind bringing this, we do a lot of work on detox, and a big part of detox is being able to actually flush out those toxins. And unfortunately, a lot of my patients have GI issues, and I suspect they're not actually flushing out all the toxins that they should be. And so that's where I want to bring in the colonics, is that it's basically a manual flush. And so what I really want to do is heavily integrate the chelation along with the colonics, where like every third chelation, or more often if you want, but every third chelation at least, you're doing colonics to make sure you're not getting backed up, you're properly flushing out.
Yeah, this is it's a good stack for things with detox in general. So anything that could detox you could potentially be a good stack. Is there anything else you do that you think would be good to stack with colonics?
It's pretty much anyone with any kind of chronic issues, probably a good candidate for colonics. And so we haven't officially decided on this yet, but we're probably going to offer more than just water-based colonics. There may be some things that we put in there. We'll probably offer rectal ozone as well. So these are just more offerings that we'll bring in through that avenue.
It's a different market as well. So this is, again, I think part of the strategy of this center is to bring in people from different walks of life who might not stumble upon an integrative medicine clinic, but they have heard of colonics. They do want to do something like that. And then when they come in, they start talking about, oh my gosh, I feel so much better after colonics. Well, why don't you let us test you for heavy metals? Or why don't you let us, maybe look at that shoulder that's been hurting you. Maybe you could use some stem cells. And then we can basically work with people who are in a different demographic, but they do still have ways that we could help them in their specific health challenges.
Exactly. One-stop natural medicine shop.
There you go. Okay, so colonics. Anything else on that one?
No, because like I said, we're going to have each of these people come on the show, so I just want to touch on everything on one episode.
Okay. So craniosacral, I think that was your next one?
Yeah, craniosacral. So it's going to be 1 to 2 practitioners. We'll obviously know this before we open, but definitely at least 2 practitioners offering craniosacral therapy. And for those that didn't listen to our hands-on healing episode, craniosacral is gentle, hands-on manipulation designed to restore normal anatomic function. There is somatic emotional releases involved with it as well. And you can treat anyone from children, from babies, from newborn babies, all the way up to full adults, elderly, anyone with any kind of anatomical issue, systemic issues, organ dysfunctions. All of these things you can accentuate their healing by doing hands-on craniosacral therapy.
Okay. Yeah, and if you want to know more about craniosacral, we'll link in the show notes to our episode on that so you can kind of get a more thorough understanding, and as well as we'll have someone on to talk about that specific offering.
Okay, let's go to Reiki and Bioenergetics. These are two women. They'll actually be working together. Separate offerings, but also similar offerings. The whole idea is that they're trying to combine their approaches, so we'll have them on together. So the bioenergetic scanning, and truthfully, I do not understand this as well as the woman, Dr. Kim, that will be offering it. So we're definitely going to have her come on the show and explain it. From what I can understand, it's basically frequency healing, and not so much even healing, but testing, where it's energy-esque testing, where you're looking for physical, emotional, mental issues, and this machine's able to pick them up and kind of display them on screen to kind of show you what's wrong with you that you may not realize.
Yeah, and this stuff is wizardry. I don't understand it, but I have done it multiple times. So I've had multiple of these bioenergetic scans, and the first time I got it, I was like, "This is BS. Like, this is trash. Does not work." And I go and I tell the person nothing, literally nothing about me. And I was dealing with like 2 health challenges at the time. I think it was like liver and low iron. And the thing showed that I needed the most help with iron and liver. I was like, I didn't tell you any of that. So I went back, waited 6 months. I did another one. I was dealing with 2 different issues that I was working on. Both of those popped up. And the other 2 were gone because I'd solved those. I was like, okay, this stuff is wild. And then I started flipping through the emotional pages and I'm like, oh yeah, that tracks. Yeah, no, that's me. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, my favorite story to tell about this. So you can scan pets as well. You swab their cheek and you put it on the machine. So we scanned my dog when she was in heat, and the dog can't tell the machine anything. And the doctor came; she did not know the dog was in heat this time. But basically, so it runs the scan the dog, and the first thing it comes up is worried about becoming a mother.
It's really fun.
Right, but like, how would this machine know this if it wasn't actually working?
Yeah, it's crazy. That is crazy.
And so the tie-in with this is kind of be, okay, so this machine's going to scan you for all these things, and then anything that energy healing Reiki can help with, that's where the Reiki practitioner will come in and do the Reiki. And then you'll be able to rescan afterwards and see what changes you have and what you need to work on next.
And as well as if there are things that they find in the scan that are not best suited for Reiki, we most likely have an offering in-house that can be used to tackle those other issues. It's like an electrical roadmap of your body and motions, basically, if I had to super simplify it. It's actually very, very handy to have that, just even as a health coach, because it can kind of give me a good idea of what my client is feeling as well as experiencing in their health. So like you can not only work on, hey, these are the diet and lifestyle and supplements you need to take, but you can also work on, hey, these are the things that we need to say for affirmations. These are the things that we need to be thinking about. This is how we need to phrase things. This is how we talk.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's kind of whole body healing.
Whole body healing. Come on. I like that's a song.
That was the top contender for the name, was the Whole Body Clinic.
Yeah, it was. It was. We had some terrible ones in there for a little bit. We had one that was like an acronym that was lore, like a backstory. I love that.
It was almost ACORN, Advanced Center of Osteopathic, Regenerative, and Natural Medicine, but we couldn't figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, we went back and forth on ACORN.
Yeah,
for like weeks.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Any other offerings? Did I miss anything?
I think that for now, that's pretty much going to be the offerings. So we have episodes about everything except colonics so far and the bioenergetics. And we'll definitely be sure to get those out ASAP.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. This is Coach Kyle and Dr. K on the Peak Performance Podcast. You can find me on Instagram at ToxinFreeKyle.
And I'm the OsteoDoc. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Peak Performance Podcast, your #1 resource for today's top health hacks and facts. You can follow us on Instagram at the Peak Performance Pod or on X at Peak Perform Pod. You can also check out our website and weekly blogs at peakperformancepodcast.online. Again, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. We put out a new podcast every Thursday. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purposes of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, carefully read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the product. Information found or received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem or should you have any healthcare questions, please promptly call or see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Coach Kyle, Dr. K, and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of the information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein.